Hey everybody, welcome back to Maya Monday. So today I'm going to be showing you two quick things that have changed in 2016. I had a question on YouTube recently about where is attached to motion path? What happened to it? How do I find it? So I'm going to show you a fast, easy way to find tools inside of Maya. Obviously, I'll show you where the attached to motion path is. And the second thing I want to talk to you about is changes that were made to the heads-up display. So inside of Maya, some of the modeling tools used to have little sliders that showed up in the viewport that allowed you to modify attributes directly kind of in the context of your modeling view. And there's been changes to the way that works in 2016. So I want to show you those changes and sort of some of the kind of extra functionality that we got with the changes, because they're actually kind of nice. So let's just get a piece of geometry in our scene and we'll look at that first. So when I go ahead and I start to make this object here, you'll notice that as soon as I hit that create polycube, a little floating window popped up. The reason that little floating window popped up is because I had my direct manipulation tool highlighted. If you deselect that direct manipulation tool, it will go away. But if you highlight the direct manipulation tool, which is either the T key on your keyboard before you when you're in the tool, or the icon right here on the left-hand side, that's what turns on that display of that kind of floating window. You can obviously grab the right-hand corner and make that bigger, which is kind of nice. And this allows you to interact with attributes that used to only live in the channel box. So you just click on the word and you use that to start to changing the value for that attribute. So what we're trying to do is filter out the most important features or the most important attributes that you might want to modify for any given tool that used to only show up in the channel box, and give you a filtered view that kind of floats in your viewport. So it gives you the ability to interact with the tool a bit faster. So what does that mean if we grab something like another tool, like let's just extrude a bunch of faces? So we'll go in here, we'll go into the extrude face tool. As soon as we do that, you can see, obviously, again, it's taking this whole list that used to live in the channel box and pulling out what we feel are the most important attributes that you're going to want to interact with. So there's a couple of things that are sort of nice about this. One of them is the way the keep faces together works. So previously in Maya, to change between whether or not the faces were stuck together when you did an extrude or not, you'd either use a marker menu to turn it on and off, or you'd go back into that channel box again and start switching that Boolean switch from a 1 value to a 0 value. So you'd click on the on, you'd hit 0, you'd hit return, it would turn it off. And it was a little tedious to do that. So obviously we made a slight improvement to that in the floating window. And now if you just click on the word on or off with the left mouse button, it just does a little Boolean switch. It just switches a toggle between on and off. So Boolean switches are a little bit faster to interact with now, which is kind of cool. So let's go ahead and check out a couple of other things that have been changed. So another thing that's kind of nice, let's just undo that guy. We don't need to have that guy, right? Let's just do a different extrude on this. I want to extrude just one of these faces. So let's go back to my extrude tool, hit my G key to repeat that last function. And what I want to do is I want to do the same extrude several different times. So if I do something like an offset on that guy and then maybe give it some divisions or something like that, I want to replicate this work over and over again. So if we jump into the options for this guy, well, obviously when you jump into the options, you have the ability to specify what's going to show up in that. So if I turned on Translate X, every time I go to extrude now, Translate X is going to be there. But there's also this copy and paste attributes. So what this is going to do is it's going to copy all the attributes and give you the ability to paste them onto your next time you execute that tool, which is kind of nice. So if we go back to this face, hit the G key and then just say paste, it's going to paste in that set of attributes. So again, repeat my last tool by hitting the G key, jump up here and just say paste attributes. And just like that, we now have the same attributes sort of going through that. Another thing that's worth mentioning, when you're working in Maya, you can always go back into the history. And if you hit your T key, again, that direct manipulator tool, it's going to bring up the on-screen widgets again for each one of those commands that you've done. So just keep that in mind when you're working in Maya, that you can always jump back in here and start modifying that information. Again, obviously in the channel box, but by hitting that T hotkey or clicking this icon over here, you'll get your on-screen displays, both the little widget here that's directly attached to the polygon, as well as your floating sub-filtered version of the channel box, which is in this form of this floating window. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is, again, that extrude, or how do you find commands in Maya? So let's go ahead and look at that. So let's get a curve in here that we're going to use for a motion path. So we can just use a CV curve and we'll just, do something something like that. Doesn't have to be fancy. So how do I attach this object to that motion path? Well, I got to find the motion path, and I don't know where it is because we've changed things in Maya. So the easiest way to do this is to go to the Help menu and go to the Find menu. Maya before did have this Find menu, but it was actually buried. So kind of smart. They brought that right up to the surface because people are going to be using it a good bit. And it works with wildcards. So if we want to find the attached to motion path, we'll just type attach, and we'll hit star on that guy and hit return, and it's going to go through. And here's something that again, I think I talked about this a bit in the new feature video. The same tool might live in multiple places because we reorganize these based on tasks. So attached to motion path, you can see lives inside of rigging. So you can see rigging, constraint, motion path attached to motion path. It also lives in animation, constraint, motion paths attached to motion path. So the attached to motion path actually lives underneath two of the filtered sections of the menu inside of Maya because the designers felt that both riggers and animators might be doing that. So if we jump over to animation, you can see that we now have constraints. So we select our object and the path we want it to be attached to. Constraint, motion paths attached to motion path. So that's where it lives. And then obviously we've got our little animation of our guy. So it's a couple of the changes that were made to 2016. These are minor little things, but they actually are important to know about. So hopefully you guys will find this tip and tricks useful. Thanks again for checking out Maya Mondays. I'll chat with you all next week. Cheers.